6 months ago, I was living in a $35 motel room, eating cold beans straight from a can, when someone knocked on my door at 2 in the morning. Room 214, Valley View Motel. The knock wasn't desperate. It wasn't drunk or impatient. It was controlled, precise, confident. The kind of knock that doesn't belong at a place like this. When I opened the door, a man stood there in a $5,000 suit. Italian cut, perfect shoes, clean hands. He looked like someone who had never had to decide between rent and groceries. "Amelia Bennett?" he asked calmly. My stomach tightened. No one came here asking for Amelia Bennett unless they wanted money. And I didn't have any. "If you're here to collect something," I said, my voice flat, "you're wasting your time." He didn't smile. "My name is James Crawford. I'm a private investigator. And what I need to tell you will destroy everything you think you know about your divorce. And about your ex-husband's cancer." The hallway neon flickered behind him, throwing broken shadows across his face. I noticed the leather briefcase in his hand, worth more than my monthly rent. Probably more than everything I owned combined. 6 months earlier, I had a life people envied. I was 43. I ran a successful contracting company in Denver. I lived in a house I built with my own hands. I had 2 incredible children, and I was married to the man I'd loved since high school. Now I lived in a motel where the walls were so thin I could hear my neighbor crying every night. Sometimes I wondered if she heard me crying too. James glanced past me into my room. The unmade bed, the hot plate on a folding table, cardboard boxes stacked like silent accusations. Something in his eyes made me step aside. 5 minutes, I said. That's all you get. He stepped in, placed the briefcase on my bed, and turned to face me. "I was hired by someone who loves you very much," he said. "Someone who never believed your ex-husband was sick." My chest tightened. He opened the briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Before your ex-husband's diagnosis," he asked, "had you ever met Dr. Stephen Walsh?" I shook my head. "No, he was referred, a specialist, the best in Colorado." James slid a photograph across the bed. It showed my ex-husband laughing at a barbecue, standing beside Dr. Stephen Walsh. The photo was dated 3 years before the diagnosis. "Dr. Walsh," James said quietly, "is your ex-husband's second cousin. And for the past 2 years, they've been planning something truly evil." The room began to spin. I grabbed the back of the chair to keep myself upright. Because if what he was saying was true, then my entire life hadn't just fallen apart. It had been destroyed on purpose. "My name is Amelia Bennett. I'm 43 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed I was the kind of woman who could survive anything, as long as I stayed responsible, loyal, and willing to work harder than everyone else. That was always my role in the Bennett family story. Not the dramatic one, not the fragile one, not the one who needed saving. I was the builder. I ran Bennett Contracting in Denver, something I grew from nothing but a dusty pickup truck and a toolbox my grandfather left behind. We didn't build cheap houses with thin walls and rushed paint jobs. We built custom homes where every detail mattered. Corners had to be true. Floors had to be level. Roof lines had to make sense. People trusted me because I didn't cut corners, even when no one would have noticed. That same stubborn honesty was how I loved, too. I met Ryan Caldwell when I was 17. High school hallway, lockers slamming, the smell of deodorant and cafeteria pizza in the air. He bumped into me carrying a stack of textbooks, and I remember how he apologized like it actually mattered. He had soft brown eyes and that kind of smile that felt safe, like warmth on a cold morning. "Are you okay?" he asked, crouching to gather my books. "I'm fine," I lied, even though my heart was racing. He held out my notebook and said, "I'm Ryan." That was it. That was the beginning. We dated through senior year, through college, through all the messy early adult years where everyone else broke up, reunited, cheated, disappeared, reinvented themselves. Ryan and I stayed. We got married young, too young, people said, but I didn't care. It felt like we were building something permanent together. And for a long time, we were. We had 2 kids. Derek, my son, who grew into the kind of boy who didn't say much but felt everything deeply. At 14, he was already taller than me, already trying to act like a man, already carrying a quiet pressure in his shoulders like he thought he had to protect everyone. And Emma, my daughter, 12 years old, bright, sensitive, disciplined, she carried her violin case like it was sacred, like music was the one thing in the world that couldn't betray her. Our home was my proudest project. I built it myself, literally. I remember standing in the empty frame when it was just beams and hope, imagining where the kitchen table would go, where Derek would leave his backpack, where Emma would practice. Every wall held a memory before the paint even dried. Mornings were routine in the best way. I'd wake up at 5:30. Ryan would still be asleep beside me, his arm heavy across the bed like an anchor. I used to watch him breathe and think, God, I'm lucky. 22 years of marriage, and I still felt that. Downstairs, Derek would already be at the table, studying his football playbook. Morning, Mom, he'd say without looking up. Can we run plays later? After work, I'd promise. Until your arm gets tired. Emma would come down with her violin case and that serious little expression that made her look older than she was. Mom, the spring concert is next month, she'd say. You'll be there, right? I wouldn't miss it for the world. Ryan used to pack lunches. He liked doing it, liked feeling useful, liked being the one who reminded everyone about dentist appointments and practice schedules. Sometimes he'd leave little notes the way people do when they still feel romantic. Coffee's ready, lunch is in the fridge, love you, Ames. I kept those notes in a drawer, like proof. On the outside, we looked like a solid family, but cracks don't always announce themselves with explosions. Sometimes they arrive as silence. Sometimes they arrive as a laugh that doesn't reach someone's eyes. Sometimes they arrive in the way your husband turns his phone screen away from you, just slightly, like it's instinct. I didn't let myself see those things, not then, because I didn't want to. I had too much to protect, too much built with my own hands. And I also had a family around me that felt steady. My parents, Robert and Lisa Bennett, lived close enough that Sunday dinners were basically law. My dad was 71 and still built like the kind of man who could carry a full sheet of plywood by himself just to prove he could. He'd owned Bennett Contracting before me. He'd walk through my job sites, running his hand along the framing like he could feel if something was wrong. Good work, sweetheart, he'd tell me. And I'd feel that swell of pride, like a kid. My mom cooked like she was feeding an army. The smell of garlic, roast chicken, warm bread. Sunday nights were always loud, always full, always safe. My brother Kyle would show up with his wife and their 3 kids. Kyle was the one who saw patterns, the one who noticed details, the one who didn't trust easily. I used to roll my eyes at that. I didn't understand yet that one day his suspicion would save my life. Back then, I thought love was enough. I thought loyalty was enough. I thought if I gave Ryan everything, my trust, my work, my body, my years, then he would never hurt me. And then, one Tuesday, he called me from the hospital, crying so hard I could barely understand him. Ames, he choked out. I'm at Denver General. They found something. Please, can you come? My hands went cold. I left my foreman, Travis Pike, in charge of the site and drove like the road didn't matter. Red lights didn't matter. Speed limits didn't matter. Nothing mattered except that awful, sinking feeling in my chest. When I got there, I found Ryan in the oncology ward. Paper gown. Mascara smudged under his eyes. His face pale, like he'd already started disappearing. And beside him stood a tall doctor in a white coat with calm, clinical eyes. Mrs. Bennett, he said, extending his hand. I'm Dr. Stephen Walsh. I shook his hand without thinking. His grip was firm, confident. Your husband has stage 3 cancer, he continued. We need to start aggressive treatment immediately. Those words hit me like a sledgehammer. Cancer had taken people in our family. I knew what it did. I knew the sound it made when it entered a room, the way everything suddenly became about survival. Ryan looked at me like he was drowning. I don't want to die, he whispered later in the parking garage, collapsing against my chest. His fingers clutched my shirt like I was the last solid thing in the world. I want to see Derek graduate. I want to see Emma perform. I want to grow old with you. My throat tightened so hard I could barely breathe. I cupped his face in my hands and stared into his eyes. Listen to me, I said, voice shaking but steady. I will do whatever it takes, whatever it costs. You are not leaving me. You hear me? We are going to beat this. He kissed me like a terrified man clinging to a promise. Promise me, he breathed. I promise, I said, on everything I am. And I meant it. That's what makes what came next so unbearable. Because when you swear that kind of promise, you don't realize you're handing someone the blueprint to destroy you. Looking back now, the warning signs were there. They weren't loud, they weren't dramatic, they didn't come with screaming arguments or obvious betrayal. They came quietly, disguised as stress, fear, exhaustion. At the time, I told myself that was normal. Of course things felt off. My husband had cancer. Of course he was distant sometimes. Of course he guarded his phone. Of course he snapped when I asked too many questions. Cancer doesn't just attack the body. It rearranges the emotional weather inside a marriage. That's what I believed. 2 weeks after Ryan's diagnosis, the first medical bills arrived. I remember sitting at the kitchen table late at night after everyone was asleep. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. I spread the envelopes out like evidence, my calculator blinking under my thumb. $47,000. That was just for diagnostics and consultations. Insurance covered 12. I stared at the numbers until they blurred, then transferred every dollar from our savings account without hesitation. I didn't tell Ryan right away. I didn't want him worrying about money while he was fighting for his life. But money has a way of announcing itself. The next morning, Ryan found me staring at the bank statement. Ames, he said softly, this is too much. Maybe we should get a second opinion. Something cheaper. I looked up at him, exhausted. There is no cheaper option for stage 3, I said. Dr. Walsh is the best. That's what you need. He hesitated, just for a second. Then he nodded. You're right, he said. I trust you. That word, trust, sat heavy in my chest. The construction business was doing well, but not well enough for this. Contracting is cash flow hell on good days. You pay crews, suppliers, permits, long before you see a dime of profit. And these weren't good days. I had 3 houses under contract. But stress makes mistakes louder. Delays multiplied. Clients got impatient. Travis noticed first. You okay, boss? He asked one afternoon, handing me the schedule. You've been distracted. My husband's sick, I said quietly. Cancer. Travis went pale. He'd lost his wife to breast cancer 5 years earlier. Jesus, Amelia, he whispered. What do you need? I tried to joke. A miracle. Or about 300 grand. He didn't laugh. I've got 20,000 saved, he said after a pause. It's yours. I shook my head. I can't take your money. You gave me a job when no one else would, he said firmly. I was a mess. Take it. I took it. Pride is expensive when someone you love is dying. Then came the second round of bills. Dr. Walsh sat across from us in his office, fingers steepled, voice calm. There's an experimental treatment, he said. New pill combination. Not FDA approved yet, so insurance won't cover it. But I've seen tumors shrink by 70%. Ryan squeezed my hand. How much? He asked. 180,000, Walsh replied. Ryan started to protest. I cut him off. We'll find it, I said, already calculating what could be sold. That was when things began to unravel. I sold the heavy equipment first. The excavator I'd saved 3 years to buy, the dump trucks, the crane. Sunday night they were listed. By Wednesday, they were gone. Clients pulled contracts. Deposits had to be returned. $60,000 of future profit vanished in a week. I called my crew into the office trailer on a Friday afternoon. Men I'd worked with for years. Men who'd been at my kids' birthday parties. Tony, my best framer, shook his head. We can take pay cuts, Amelia. Work for less. It won't be enough, I said, voice cracking. I need you to file for unemployment. Find other work. When this is over, I'll bring you all back. They left quietly. Travis stayed. This isn't right, he said. Something feels off. Cancer doesn't care what feels right, I replied. The house went on the market in month 3. the house I built with my own hands. Derek found me in the workshop, staring at the beam where I'd carved his birth year. "Mom," he asked softly, "are we really moving?" "It's temporary," I lied. "When Dad gets better, we'll build another one." "I don't want another one," he said. "I want this one." So did I. But it sold in 2 weeks. $420,000. After the mortgage, we cleared $300. Every cent went to medical bills. We moved into a small 2-bedroom rental downtown. Emma shared a room with her brother for the first time in her life. She never complained, but I heard her crying at night through the thin walls. My father came over one evening and watched me packing tools to sell. "This has gone far enough," he said. "Let me help." "You and Mom need your retirement money," I said. "We need our daughter," he snapped. "We can give you $50,000. "I won't take it." He slammed his hand on the table. "Forget your pride. You're drowning." I didn't budge. The wedding ring was the last thing to go. 3 carats. Platinum. Bought when I landed my first big contract. At Solomon's pawn shop, Mr. Solomon studied it sadly. "This ring has history," he said. "Your grandfather bought the original band from my father." "How much?" I asked. "It's worth 8. I'll give you 15. "I can't take charity." "It's not charity," he said gently. "It's faith." I took it. That covered another month. And through all of this, Ryan started getting better, physically. The weight loss sharpened his cheekbones, but his color returned. Dr. Walsh showed us scans, tumors shrinking dramatically. "We're looking at full remission," he said. Ryan cried with relief. I felt only exhaustion. Kyle pulled me aside one Sunday. "Something's wrong," he said quietly. "The way Ryan looks at you, like he's disappointed." "He's been sick," I said. "You're imagining it." But he wasn't. I just didn't want to see it yet. Because that same week, Ryan was declared cancer-free. He started smiling at his phone, and that was when the ground beneath me began to crack. 6 weeks after Dr. Walsh declared Ryan cancer-free, I came home from a day of manual labor, temporary work I'd taken just to keep cash coming in, and found 2 suitcases sitting on our bedroom floor. They were his. Neatly packed, organized, deliberate. The apartment smelled different that day. Sharp, expensive. The cologne Ryan hadn't worn in over a year, the one he'd abandoned during treatment because it made him nauseous, now hung heavy in the air. He stood by the dresser, folding clothes with a precision he only used when he was angry. "Ryan?" I asked slowly. "What's going on?" He didn't look up. "I'm leaving you, Amelia." The words didn't register at first. They landed in my ears like a foreign language, recognizable sounds with no meaning. "What?" I said. "Leaving where? Are we going somewhere?" Still, he didn't look at me. "I'm done," he said flatly. "This marriage is over." My chest tightened so hard it hurt. I had just spent 14 months dismantling my entire life to save him. 14 months selling everything I owned. 14 months promising my children it would all be okay. You're better," I said. "You're cancer-free. We won. We're supposed to rebuild now." That was when he finally turned toward me, and I didn't recognize the man looking back. His eyes were cold, empty, sharp like winter glass. "Look at you," he said quietly. "You're pathetic." I felt the words hit my body before my mind could catch up. "Pathetic," I repeated. "You're working day labor," he continued, voice calm, cruelly measured, "living in this dump, wearing the same 3 shirts because you sold everything else." "I sold everything to save your life," I said, my hands shaking. "And that," he replied, "is exactly the problem." He laughed. Not nervous, not awkward, cruel. "A real woman wouldn't have lost everything," he said. "A real woman would have found a way to keep her business, her house, her dignity." My ears rang. "My lawyer," he went on, folding another shirt, "Marcus Qley, now there's someone who knows how to handle life. He sees my potential, who I could be without you dragging me down." The name hit me like ice water. Marcus Qley, the divorce attorney with billboards all over I-25. "You're having an affair," I said. "It's not an affair when the marriage is already dead," he replied. "It died the day you sold the house, maybe before." He turned fully toward me then, eyes burning. I watched you beg for money, watched you grovel at that pawn shop, watched you fire your crew like a coward. I was saving your life, I whispered. Well, congratulations, he said coldly. You saved it. And now I'm going to live it properly, with someone who isn't a complete failure. He handed me a folder. Divorce papers. Already drafted. Already signed. By him. Colleen says you'll need your own lawyer, he added casually. Though I don't know how you'll afford one. I flipped through the pages, my vision blurring. Full custody. Spousal support. A percentage of any future income I might ever earn again. You can't take my children, I said, my voice breaking. I can, he replied, and I will. They need stability, not a mother living paycheck to paycheck. Kyle arrived within an hour. He read the papers once, twice. His face turned red. This is insane, he said. You can't do this. Ryan smiled. I already am. 3 weeks later, in a courtroom that smelled like old paper and stale coffee, everything I had left was stripped away. Ryan sat beside Marcus Qley in designer clothes I'd never seen before. The judge listened. The lies were polished, rehearsed, perfect. I tried to explain. I sold everything for his cancer treatment, I said. The bills were over $300,000. And where are those medical records? Qley interrupted smoothly. My stomach dropped. They're private, he continued, but my client would have survived with standard care. Mrs. Bennett chose excessive measures that bankrupted the family unnecessarily. Excessive. The children were brought in. Derek wouldn't look at me. Emma stared at her hands, shaking. Who would you prefer to live with? The judge asked. Mom's house is better, Derek said flatly. We need stability. Emma nodded, tears streaming silently. The ruling was swift. Full custody to Ryan, supervised visitation for me. Financial obligations I couldn't meet. Outside the courthouse, Ryan walked past me with the kids. Marcus Qley stopped beside me. Love is for people who can afford it, he said. That night, I checked into Valley View Motel, room 214, $35 a night. And I thought my story had ended there. The first night at Valley View Motel, I didn't sleep. The bed sagged in the middle like it had given up a long time ago. The TV flickered between 3 channels, all of them loud in different, useless ways. I turned it off and lay there, staring at the water-stained ceiling, counting the cracks like they were constellations I might someday navigate out of this place. I kept replaying the courtroom in my head, Derek's flat voice, Emma's trembling hands, Ryan's calm expression, as if he were discussing a real estate deal, not dismantling a family. I didn't cry at first. I felt hollow, like something essential had been scooped out of me, leaving only a shell that still breathed, still moved, but didn't quite belong to itself anymore. The next morning, I woke up before dawn out of habit. My body still expected purpose. I showered in lukewarm water, put on my cleanest shirt, and went to a construction supply yard looking for day labor. They paid cash. No questions. That became my routine. Work all day, eat something cheap. Come back to room 214. Sit on the bed and stare at my phone, willing it to ring with my children's names. Sometimes it did. Sometimes it didn't. When Derek called, his voice sounded careful, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing. Mom, he said once, Dad says you're doing okay. I swallowed. I am, sweetheart. It wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the truth either. Emma cried more openly. She told me she missed our old house, her room, the smell of sawdust in my workshop. He says you chose money over us, she whispered once. I closed my eyes. I chose you, I said. Always. After the calls, I sat alone and asked myself questions that had no clean answers. Did I miss something obvious? Did I push too hard? Did I turn love into obligation? There were moments, dark, quiet moments, when I almost believed Ryan, that maybe I had become less feminine by being too strong, that maybe I should have let someone else save him, that maybe selling everything had made me smaller in his eyes. Then I remembered his laughter at the pawn shop, and the doubt turned to something heavier. Anger. But it wasn't the explosive kind. It was slow, internal, acidic. Kyle called every day. "You need to fight this," he said. "With what?" I asked. "I don't even have a lawyer." "You have us." I stopped answering after a while. Not because I didn't love them, but because hope hurt more than silence. My parents showed up at the motel once. My mother took one look at the room and had to sit down. "This isn't your life," she said fiercely. "It is for now," I replied. My father didn't say much. He just hugged me, longer than usual, like he was memorizing the shape of me. "I raised you to put family first," he said quietly. "You did that." "And look where it got me," I snapped. He didn't argue. That scared me more than if he had. Weeks blurred together. I stopped thinking in terms of future and started thinking in terms of survival. Get through today. Get through tomorrow. Don't drown in what-ifs. Then, one night, while I was eating cold beans from a can, the woman in the next room started crying. Soft at first, then louder. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I cried too. Not for the house, not for the business, not even for Ryan. I cried because I had done everything right and still lost. I cried because my children thought I had failed them. I cried because I didn't know how to be strong anymore. That was the moment I truly believed I was alone. And that was when the knock came. At 2 a.m. James Crawford didn't waste time. Once the door closed behind him, he opened the briefcase again and spread its contents across my bed like a second life. One I didn't recognize, but that clearly belonged to me. Bank statements, photographs, transcripts, medical records. All of this, he said evenly, has been verified. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands clenched so tightly my nails bit into my palms. "You're saying Ryan never had cancer," I whispered. "I'm saying the medical records were falsified," James replied. "The treatments were saline, vitamins, and medications designed to induce symptoms. Weight loss, nausea, anxiety. Everything convincing enough to look real." I shook my head. I saw him vomit. I watched him cry. I held him when he said he was scared. James nodded once. He was scared, just not of cancer. He slid over wire transfer confirmations. Every time I sold something, equipment, property, personal items, money moved. Not to hospitals, not to pharmacies, to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. My chest tightened until I thought I might black out. "My house," I said hoarsely. "The $300,000. Deposited offshore within 48 hours, James confirmed. Your ex-husband did this for 2 years, with help." He pointed to a name, Dr. Stephen Walsh. Marcus Qley. "They planned it," James continued. "Diagnosis, treatment schedules, appointments when you couldn't attend, divorce timing, custody strategy. The room felt too small." "And my kids?" I asked. "They testified against me." James's expression softened for the first time. "Your father intervened," he said, quietly, carefully. My breath caught. "Robert Bennett never believed Ryan was sick," James continued. "When Ryan refused to let him attend appointments, your father hired me. 6 months ago," he added. 6 months, while I was breaking, while I was starving, while I was convincing myself I deserved this. "Your mother followed Ryan," James said. "Documented movements, locations, lies." "Kyle traced the money," he went on. "He's very good with patterns." I covered my mouth as realization hit me all at once. They hadn't abandoned me. They had been fighting for me. "We needed everything," James said, ironclad. "One mistake and Ryan would have vanished, with the money and possibly your children." He slid over a final document. "An FBI arrest warrant. In 4 hours," he said, "Ryan Caldwell and Marcus Qley will be taken into custody. Fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, custodial interference." My heart pounded. "This is real," I whispered. "Yes," James said, "and there's more." He handed me a property deed. My house. The house I built. "Your father bought it through a trust the day you sold it," James said. "He's been maintaining it, keeping your workshop exactly as you left it. Tears blurred my vision. He said you'd need it when this was over. James stood, closing the briefcase. One more thing, he added, handing me a set of keys. Your truck is outside. He's been keeping it running. After James left, I sat in the dark for a long time. Then I stood, showered, put on my last clean shirt, and walked out of room 214. For the first time in months, I wasn't running from something. I was walking back toward myself. I didn't drive straight to my parents' house. Instead, I sat in the truck for nearly an hour, hands resting on the steering wheel, engine off, Motel neon buzzing behind me like a reminder of where I'd been trapped. Because knowing the truth didn't erase the damage. It didn't give me back the months I'd spent believing I was weak. It didn't erase the sound of my son choosing his father in court. It didn't take away the memory of my daughter crying herself to sleep in a room that wasn't hers. Truth is powerful, but it's also brutal. As the adrenaline faded, something else crept in. Grief. Not just for the marriage, not just for the money, but for the woman I had been before all of this. The one who believed love was always rewarded. I thought about every moment I doubted myself. Every time I wondered if I was too much, too driven, too practical, too strong. I'd questioned my femininity, my worth, my instincts, all because I trusted the man I built my life with. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel and finally let myself feel it all. The humiliation, the rage, the shame. I had sold my wedding ring, the symbol of a promise he never meant to keep, while he laughed about it. I had fired my crew, dismantled my business, uprooted my children, and he had watched, calculated, waited. The darkest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was realizing how easily he had weaponized my love. For a moment, just one, I wondered what would have happened if James hadn't knocked on that door. That thought scared me more than anything else. I sat there until the sky began to lighten, gray bleeding into blue. Then my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. We're on the porch. Take your time. You're safe. That was when I understood something fundamental. Rock bottom isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, still, lonely. But it's also the place where lies can't follow you anymore. I started the engine and drove home. The sun was just breaking over the trees when I pulled into my parents' driveway. Their house looked exactly the same. White siding, flower boxes my mother insisted on refreshing every season. The porch lights still on, even though it was morning. It was the kind of constancy I hadn't realized I'd been starving for. They were all there. My parents stood side by side. Kyle leaned against the railing, arms crossed, trying and failing to look calm. And then the front door opened wider, and two small figures ran forward before I could even shut off the engine. Mom! Emma reached me first. She slammed into my chest so hard I almost lost my balance. Her arms locked around my waist, like she was afraid I'd vanish if she let go. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. She made us say those things. She said if we didn't, she'd send us away. I didn't mean it, Mom, I swear. Derek was right behind her. He didn't cry. He never did. But he hugged me harder than he ever had, his face buried in my shoulder. I knew something was wrong, he said hoarsely. The way he talked about you. The way he laughed about selling the house. Grandpa showed us everything. We know the truth. I sank to my knees in the driveway, holding them both, my hands shaking as months of fear finally cracked open. You didn't betray me, I whispered. You were protecting yourselves. That's what kids do. Behind them, my father cleared his throat. That's enough, he said gently. She's home now. Inside, the house smelled like coffee and toast. My mother pressed a mug into my hands like it was a ritual. Something grounding. You don't have to talk, she said. You don't have to explain. Just sit. But before I could even settle, my phone rang. Mrs. Bennett, a calm voice said. This is Agent Michelle Turner with the FBI. We have Ryan Caldwell and Marcus Qley in custody. Dr. Stephen Walsh was arrested yesterday and has already cooperated. My knees went weak again. Is it over? I asked. It's beginning, she replied. With the evidence we have, they're facing significant federal sentences. The accounts have been frozen, Restitution is in progress. I ended the call and looked up at my family. They have him, I said. My mother cried openly. Kyle let out a sharp laugh of disbelief. My father just nodded once. Good, he said quietly. Now you can breathe. And in that moment, I realized something profound. The power had already shifted. Not because Ryan was in handcuffs, not because the money was coming back, but because I was no longer begging for truth. I had it. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. I looked at my children, at my parents, at the life that had been preserved for me when I couldn't preserve it myself. I'm not running anymore, I said. I'm rebuilding. My father smiled, not proudly, but knowingly. That's my girl. The fallout didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived with silence. The kind of silence that follows sirens, court filings, sealed evidence bags, and the sudden absence of a man who once moved through the world like he was untouchable. Ryan Caldwell disappeared from public view overnight. His name vanished from social events, from neighborhood group chats, from the carefully curated life he'd stepped into after leaving me. The 4-bedroom house in Cherry Creek, the one he'd told the court was proof of stability, sat dark and empty within a week. The locks were changed by federal order, the accounts frozen, the credit cards declined mid-purchase. Marcus Qley's fall was faster. One day, his billboard still loomed over the highway. Smiling face, perfect suit, aggressive representation. The next, they were gone, yanked down quietly. His law firm's website replaced with a single line. This office is permanently closed. Friends who once praised him stopped answering calls. Clients scrambled to distance themselves. The Bar Association moved swiftly. Disbarment proceedings began before the ink on the arrest report was dry. And Ryan? He sat in a federal holding cell, stripped of designer clothes, stripped of the control he'd worshipped, stripped of the audience that made him feel powerful. He tried to call me. 3 times. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, but because I was done giving him access to my voice. The court moved quickly after the arrests. Emergency hearings, revised custody orders, psychological evaluations. Everything Ryan had built his case on, my supposed instability, my reckless financial decisions, collapsed the moment the truth surfaced. The judge didn't look at me the same way this time. She looked at the evidence. Full custody was returned to me, unsupervised, immediate. Ryan's parental rights were suspended pending sentencing. When Derek and Emma came home with me that night, they didn't say much. They walked through the house slowly, touching walls, opening drawers, breathing in familiarity. Emma went straight to her old room and sat on the bed like she needed to remind herself it was real. Derek stood in the workshop, running his fingers along the workbench. It smells the same, he said quietly. I watched them, heart heavy but steady. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I didn't feel victorious. I felt settled. Ryan was sentenced months later. 12 years in federal prison for fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, and custodial interference. Marcus Qley received 15 years and permanent disbarment. Dr. Stephen Walsh lost his medical license and accepted an 8-year sentence in exchange for cooperation. Most of the money was gone, hidden too well, spent too fast. But some of it was recovered, enough to restart Bennett Contracting, enough to pay back debts, enough to breathe. The crew came back one by one. Travis was first, then Tony, then the rest. We were smaller, leaner, stronger. Clients returned, quieter now, more respectful. Word travels fast when a lie collapses this publicly. I never once had to explain what happened. People could see it in my eyes. And Ryan? He wrote me a letter, apologized, blamed fear, blamed pressure, blamed everything except himself. I didn't write back. Not out of cruelty, but because some chapters don't need a response. They just need to end. 6 months after the morning I walked out of room 214, I stood in my workshop again, running my hands over the same scarred workbench where I'd once taught Derek how to hold a hammer without smashing his thumb. The space smelled like sawdust and oil, like home. Derek and Emma worked beside me that Saturday morning, sanding boards for a custom bookshelf we were building for my mother. Emma hummed softly as she worked, the same tune she'd practiced for weeks leading up to her spring concert. "Mom," she asked suddenly, "how do you trust anyone after what he did?" I paused, then set my tools down. "You don't stop trusting," I said carefully, "but you stop trusting blindly. Love should include faith, but it should also protect you." Derek looked up. "Do you hate him?" "No," I replied. "Hate would mean he still has power over me. I don't feel hate. I feel clarity." Travis walked in with coffee and donuts, like he used to. The crew followed. Laughter filled the space, real laughter, not forced. The motel key from room 214 still hangs on a hook near the door, not as a symbol of failure, but as proof. Proof that rock bottom isn't the end if someone refuses to let you stay there. 2 weeks ago, a woman called me. Her husband had been diagnosed with a rare illness, and something didn't feel right. James Crawford had given her my number. We found inconsistencies within minutes. She still has her house. That's enough. Yesterday, Emma performed her solo at the spring concert. I sat in the front row between my parents, Kyle on my other side, Travis and the crew filling the row behind us. When she played, I didn't think about the man who destroyed our family. I thought about second chances, about grace, about the quiet strength it takes to stand back up. If you're listening to this and someone you loved broke you, hear me. Your story isn't over. There are people fighting for you, even if you don't see them yet. Rock bottom isn't the end. Sometimes it's just the foundation. I'm Amelia Bennett. I build houses. I raise my children. I survived the worst betrayal of my life, and I'm still here. Still building, still choosing truth, still choosing myself.